There's a principle in life that governs purpose and success, and it is this: when God gives you a vision, He will also provide the means to fulfill it. Many people are afraid to pursue what is in their heart because they worry about resources, money, connections, support. But let me tell you this: God never gives a vision without also providing what is necessary to accomplish it. The problem is, most people look for provision. That is not how the divine system works. Vision comes from God. Every person in this world was born with a purpose, and that purpose is wrapped in a vision given by God. Vision is not something you create. It is something you discover. When you seek God, He reveals to you what you were born to do. Look at the great leaders, innovators, and world changers. Each of them had a vision that was bigger than themselves. They did not have all the resources when they started, but they had clarity of purpose. When you align yourself with the vision God has placed in you, you step into a divine plan where everything you need is already prepared. Provision follows purpose. One of the greatest mistakes people make is chasing after provision before pursuing vision. They say, I will start when I have enough money, or I will begin when the right people support me. But that is not how divine provision works. Provision follows vision. Think about it. A tree does not struggle to find water and sunlight. The moment the seed is planted in the right soil, nature provides what is needed for growth. In the same way, when you step into the assignment God has given you, He will send the right people, the right finances, and the right doors of opportunity. Faith and preparation activate provision. Some people say, I am waiting on God to provide before I move. But in reality, God is waiting on them to move before He provides. Faith is the currency of divine provision. The moment you take action toward your vision, even in small ways, God begins to release the resources you need. Look at Noah. God gave him a vision of an ark, but the wood did not appear overnight. He had to start building, and as he built, God provided. The same applies to you. If God has given you a vision for education, start learning. If He has given you a vision for business, start planning. When you act in faith, the provision will come. Challenges are part of the process. Many people give up when they face obstacles, thinking that difficulties mean they are on the wrong path. But listen carefully. Challenges are a confirmation that you are on the right path. Every great vision will be tested. Moses had a vision to lead the Israelites to the promised land, but he faced resistance from Pharaoh. Joseph had a dream of leadership, but he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned before reaching his destiny. The trials you face are not to break you, they are to shape you. God allows obstacles to strengthen your faith, refine your character, and prepare you to handle the provision He is bringing. If God has placed a vision in your heart, do not let fear or doubt hold you back. Do not wait for perfect conditions or unlimited resources. Move forward in faith, knowing that God has already prepared everything you need. The provision is already there. You just need to step into it. Believe in the vision He has given you. Take action and watch how He unfolds His plan in ways you could never have imagined. Your vision is His assignment. Your provision is His responsibility. Walk in faith and He will provide. Every individual on this earth is born with a divine purpose. And that purpose is carried within a vision placed inside them by God. Vision is not something we create out of personal ambition or wishful thinking. It is something we discover as we align ourselves with the Creator's will. When God formed you, He placed within you everything needed to fulfill the assignment He has designed specifically for your life. This is why no two people have the exact same vision. Each person carries a unique deposit of purpose that is meant to impact the world in a way that no one else can. A vision from God is not limited by human abilities, background, or circumstances. It is greater than personal desires and far beyond selfish ambition. The true test of whether a vision comes from God is that it will always serve others and bring glory to Him. A divine vision does not merely seek personal success or gain, but contributes to the betterment of people, communities, and generations. This is why great leaders in history, whether they were prophets, reformers, or inventors, did not pursue their own comfort, but rather a purpose that outlived them. When God gives a person a vision, He is not just thinking about that individual, He is thinking about the people who will be impacted through their obedience to that vision. One of the clearest indicators that a vision comes from God is that it is always bigger than the person receiving it. A true vision often seems impossible in human terms, requiring divine intervention to be fulfilled. This is why many people resist stepping into their vision, because they feel unqualified, underprepared, or incapable of achieving it. However, God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He places the vision within us, and then equips us step by step as we walk in obedience. This is evident throughout history. Whenever God called someone to accomplish something great, they initially felt inadequate. Moses, when given the vision to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, questioned his own ability to speak. Gideon, chosen to lead Israel against its enemies, saw himself as weak and unworthy. Jeremiah, called to be a prophet, thought he was too young. But in each case, God reminded them that the vision did not depend on their personal ability, but on His power working through them. A divine vision is always connected to faith. It requires a person to trust in God's plan, even when they cannot see the full picture. Many people delay or ignore their vision because they want to see all the details before taking the first step. But that is not how God operates. When God gives a vision, He rarely reveals the entire journey up front. Instead, He gives a glimpse of the destination and expects faith and obedience for each step along the way. Abraham was told to leave his homeland and go to a place that God would show him. But he was not given a detailed map or timeline. He had to move forward in faith, trusting that God would guide him as he obeyed. The same principle applies today. Those who wait for all the details before acting often miss their divine assignment. God-given vision often brings opposition. Many people assume that if a vision is truly from God, everything should fall into place easily. But history and Scripture teach the opposite. Every major vision given by God has been met with resistance, doubt, and obstacles. This is because a true vision disrupts the status quo, challenges existing systems, and requires transformation. When Nehemiah received a vision to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, he faced intense opposition from those who did not want the city to be restored. When Jesus came with the vision of salvation, He faced persecution from religious leaders who resisted His message. This pattern remains true today. Whenever a person begins to walk in their God-given vision, they will encounter critics, challenges, and even betrayal. However, opposition does not mean that the vision is wrong. Rather, it is confirmation that the vision is significant. One of the most dangerous things a person can do is ignore or reject the vision God has placed within them. Many people live their entire lives without fulfilling their divine assignment, not because God did not give them a vision, but because they allowed fear, doubt, or distractions to stop them. Some people trade their vision for security, choosing comfort over purpose. Others allow the opinions of people to dictate their decisions, suppressing the calling within them. But the truth is, no amount of success, wealth, or status can replace the fulfillment that comes from walking in God's vision. Those who pursue personal ambition without aligning with divine vision often find themselves empty, even after achieving their goals. True fulfillment comes not from following our own plans, but from discovering and obeying the vision that God has given us. God's vision for your life is not just for you. It is for those you are called to impact. A tree does not bear fruit for itself. Its fruit is for others to eat. In the same way, a vision from God is designed to bless, transform, and uplift others. This is why discovering and pursuing vision is so crucial. It is not just about personal success, but about fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. When you align yourself with the vision God has placed in your heart, you step into a divine plan that is bigger than you. You become part of something eternal, something that continues to make an impact long after you are gone. Every great movement, invention, or transformation in history started with a vision placed inside someone by God. The question is not whether God has given you a vision. The question is whether you will trust Him enough to follow it. Those who step into their vision with faith and obedience find that God has already prepared everything they need, the resources, the connections, the opportunities. All of it is already waiting, but it begins with obedience. Your vision is your assignment, and your obedience is the key to unlocking everything God has in store. One of the greatest misconceptions people have about fulfilling their vision is that they need to secure all the resources before they start. Many believe they must have financial stability, the right connections, and favorable conditions before they can pursue what God has placed in their hearts. However, this is not how divine provision works. When God gives a vision, the provision is already prepared, but it does not manifest until the individual steps into their purpose. Provision is not the starting point, purpose is. When a person aligns with their divine assignment, everything they need begins to unfold at the right time. The principle that provision follows purpose can be seen in nature. Consider a tree. Before it even begins to grow, the soil is already equipped with the nutrients it needs. The sun is positioned to provide light, and the rain is scheduled to nourish it. The tree does not have to go looking for provision. It simply grows in alignment with its purpose, and everything necessary for its survival comes to it. In the same way, when a person steps into their God-given purpose, the resources, opportunities, and people they need will be drawn to them. The problem is that many people wait for resources before they begin, and as a result, they never start. Biblical history and real-life experiences confirm that provision follows purpose. When Moses was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he did not have an army, wealth, or resources. He only had a staff and the word of God. Yet, as he walked in obedience, God provided every step of the way, manna in the wilderness, water from a rock, and divine protection. When Elijah was sent to prophesy during a drought, God directed him to a brook where ravens fed him. When that source dried up, God led him to a widow who, though she had almost nothing, experienced supernatural provision as she obeyed the prophet's instructions. These stories show that God's provision is not given all at once, but is released in alignment with purpose. People often struggle with the fear of lack, thinking that if they step out into their vision, they will not have enough to sustain them. This fear keeps many from fulfilling their divine calling. However, the reality is that provision is always connected to obedience. Abraham was given a promise that he would be the father of many nations, yet he had no child for many years. When the child of promise, Isaac, was finally born, God tested Abraham by asking him to sacrifice his. Abraham obeyed, And at the last moment, God provided a ram in the thicket as a substitute. This was a demonstration of a powerful principle. God's provision is always revealed at the point of obedience. If Abraham had refused to move forward, he would never have seen God's supernatural supply. One of the reasons people do not see divine provision is that they operate outside of their purpose. God does not provide for what He has not assigned. Many individuals chase opportunities that look good but are not aligned with the divine vision. As a result, they struggle and experience frustration because they are working outside of the provision God has ordained. When Jonah ran from his purpose, he encountered storms and difficulties. It was only when he surrendered to God's calling that his situation changed. This teaches an important lesson. When we function within God's purpose, we are sustained by divine provision. Provision does not always come in the way people expect. Many think that if God provides, it must come in a dramatic or obvious way. However, divine provision often comes through unexpected channels. Sometimes God uses people, connections, or opportunities that seem insignificant at first. The widow of Zarephath did not look like a source of provision for Elijah, yet she was the key to his sustenance. David did not look like a king when he was tending sheep, yet his provision was in his faithfulness to his assignment. Many people miss their provision because they expect it to come in a certain way, failing to recognize that God's ways are higher than human understanding. It is also important to note that provision comes in phases. God does not always give everything at once. He provides according to the stage of the journey. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, they received manna daily, not monthly or yearly. This required them to trust God for daily provision. If they tried to store it up, it would spoil, teaching them dependence on God. In the same way, provision in life often comes step by step. When a person is faithful with what God provides in one season, they are positioned to receive more in the next season. This is why faithfulness in small beginnings is crucial. Before God releases greater provision, He tests how well a person manages what they currently have. Many people pray for provision but are unwilling to walk in purpose. They ask God for financial breakthroughs, business success, or open doors, yet they have not aligned themselves with the vision He has given them. Provision is always tied to purpose. When a person follows their divine assignment, they do not have to chase after resources. Resources will chase after them. This is why Jesus told His disciples not to worry about what they would eat, drink, or wear. He assured them that as they sought first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, all these things would be added to them. The priority is not the provision. The priority is the purpose. Those who walk in their God-given purpose will always experience divine provision. It may not always come in advance, and it may not always look the way they expect, but it will always be sufficient for what is needed at each stage. The key is to move in faith, trusting that as they pursue what God has placed in their hearts, He will supply every need. Provision is never the problem. Alignment with purpose is. When a person fully embraces their divine vision, they step into a life where provision is no longer a struggle, but a natural outcome of fulfilling their assignment. Many people have a vision from God but remain stagnant, waiting for provision to appear before they take the first step. They pray for resources, financial breakthroughs, and opportunities, but they do not realize that divine provision is often released in response to faith and preparation. God does not provide everything in advance. He provides as we move forward in obedience. The principle is simple. When you take the first step in faith, God releases the next step of provision. When you prepare for the vision He has given you, He begins to align the necessary resources, people, and circumstances to support it. Faith is the foundation upon which divine provision operates. Throughout history, God has demonstrated that He responds to faith, not fear, doubt, or hesitation. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, God did not part the waters before they moved. It was only when Moses stretched out his rod in faith that the waters divided, creating a pathway to their deliverance. The same principle applies to anyone pursuing a God-given vision. Provision does not precede action, it follows it. Many people delay their destiny because they want to see all the details before moving. But faith does not work that way. God requires us to trust Him beyond what is visible. Preparation is equally important in activating provision. While faith is the key that unlocks God's provision, preparation is the vessel that holds it. Many individuals pray for opportunities but fail to prepare themselves to handle them. They ask God for financial increase but have not developed the discipline to manage resources wisely. They desire business success but have not taken the time to learn the skills necessary for growth. They dream of leadership but have not cultivated the character and knowledge required to sustain it. God does not waste His resources. He provides to those who have demonstrated readiness. If a person is not prepared, the provision will either overwhelm them or be misused. A clear example of this principle is found in the life of Noah. God gave him a vision of an ark to save his family and the animals from the coming flood. However, the ark did not appear miraculously. Noah had to build it. He had to prepare according to God's instructions, cutting wood, constructing each part, and ensuring the vessel was strong enough to endure the storm. It was only after he completed the ark that the rain came. If Noah had waited for rain before he started building, he would have been unprepared and suffered loss. This story teaches a valuable lesson. Provision comes when we prepare for what God has already revealed. Faith requires action. The book of James tells us that faith without works is dead. This means that believing in God's provision is not enough. We must take steps that align with our belief. If a farmer has faith for a harvest, he does not sit and wait. He prepares the land, plants the seeds, and tends to the crops. Only then does the harvest come. Many people expect God to provide without doing their part. They wait for doors to open but refuse to knock. They desire growth but do not take steps toward it. Faith is not passive, it is active. When we take bold steps in obedience, God meets us with supernatural provision. One of the biggest obstacles to activating provision is fear. Many individuals hesitate to move forward because they fear failure, lack, or rejection. They want to be certain of success before taking action. However, faith requires stepping into the unknown, trusting that God has already gone ahead to prepare the way. Peter walked on water only when he stepped out of the boat. As long as he stayed inside, he remained in human limitation. The moment he took action, the supernatural was activated. In the same way, when we step out in faith toward our vision, God releases the necessary provision to sustain us. Another key aspect of activating provision is consistency. Many people start with faith but give up when they do not see immediate results. They expect provision to come instantly, and when it does not, they lose motivation. However, God often tests faith through waiting. Abraham waited years for his promised son. Joseph endured betrayal and imprisonment before stepping into his destiny. David was anointed king long before he sat on the throne. God's timing is perfect, but it requires patience and persistence. Those who remain faithful and continue preparing will see provision manifest at the appointed time. Divine provision is not always visible in the beginning, when God calls a person to a vision, He often starts with small provisions that require stewardship. The principle of faithful in little, ruler over much applies here. Those who handle small resources wisely will be entrusted with greater ones. The parable of the talents illustrates this well. The servants who invested what they were given received more, while the one who buried his talent lost even what he had. Many people do not see provision because they have not been faithful with the small opportunities God has already provided. Another important truth is that provision is often hidden in obedience. Many times, what people see as ordinary work is actually part of God's preparation process. David was tending sheep before he became a king. Joseph was managing a household and a prison before he managed a nation. The skills they developed in those seasons were necessary for their future assignments. If they had not been diligent in small tasks, they would not have been prepared for greater responsibility. Some people miss their provision because they disregard small beginnings, not realizing that each step of obedience leads to greater supply. Faith and preparation work together to activate divine provision. It is not enough to believe, one must act. It is not enough to hope, one must prepare. Those who step out in faith and diligently equip themselves will find that God has already set up everything they need. Doors will open at the right time, resources will appear in unexpected ways, and divine connections will align to fulfill the vision. But it all begins with faith and preparation. Those who wait for perfect conditions before acting will miss their moment. Those who trust God and take bold steps forward will experience His supernatural provision in ways beyond their imagination. Obedience is one of the most powerful principles in the kingdom of God. When God gives a person a vision, He does not expect them to figure everything out on their own. He requires only one thing: obedience. When we align our actions with His instructions, we unlock supernatural provision that is beyond human effort. God's provision is not dependent on human logic, resources, or qualifications. Many people struggle in life not because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but because they fail to obey divine direction. Provision is not a mystery. It is the natural outcome of walking in obedience to God's will. The Bible is filled with examples of people who experienced supernatural supply simply because they obeyed God's instructions. One powerful example is found in the life of Elijah. During a time of drought and famine, God told Elijah to go to the brook Cherith, where ravens would feed him. This instruction made no logical sense. Ravens are scavengers, not providers. Yet because Elijah obeyed, he received daily provision. Later, when the brook dried up, God sent him to a widow in Zarephath. Again, this seemed illogical. The widow had only a handful of flour and a little oil left for her and her son. However, when she obeyed the prophet's instruction to first make him a small cake, her supply never ran out. Her obedience unlocked a supernatural flow of provision that sustained her household throughout the famine. Many people pray for provision but do not follow the instructions that come with it. They ask God to bless them financially, yet they do not practice good stewardship or generosity. They ask for opportunities, yet they ignore divine direction when it requires sacrifice or inconvenience. Provision is always attached to obedience. When God gives a command, it is not to burden us, but to position us for blessing. The problem is that many people want provision without obedience. They want success without surrender. However, in God's kingdom, the key to abundance is not effort alone, it is obedience.